I'm Matthew Visyak, and basically I play video games as a hobby. It's been a hobby that I've had since a young age, and currently I'm not sure if I would consider myself a gamer, but I certainly do play my share of video games, and I find my niche in completionist games and trying to find every single thing and up the challenge of the standard game to make it interesting. Like, I'll try to find some different goal off the beaten path and try to pursue that. I originally created my YouTube channel just to kind of share my accomplishments and to kind of make a forum. In some videos, people will communicate with me and maybe propose a different challenge or a way to make the game harder. I started to become part of a community to write different guides on different games. I have a couple guides that I'm writing now. I mainly look for older games that aren't necessarily represented as much as the newer games. So kind of the hidden gems off the beaten path. Or I'll submit certain things to the community. I find that it's a very vibrant community. So you really have to have your I's dotted and T's crossed whenever you talk to them, because you're dealing with experts. You're dealing with people that have actually hacked the game, got the guts of the ROM to support their claims. So it's more than just simply going out there and, spitting whatever knowledge that you want. You have to make sure that you back up your claim. Otherwise, people will, call you on it.
It's time for an adventure in the worlds of user experience and game design. On Season 3 of the Design Thinking Games podcast, join old-school UXers and aspiring game designers Michael Schofield, Tim Broadwater, and an array of quirky characters, from pixelated heroes to mischievous NPCs, in search of the ultimate player experience. Design thinking is a process that is applied to different types of games in this podcast. If you're wondering whether your favorite games have already come up, you can listen through the backlog at designthinkinggames.com. Now, Rapid Protobot, fire the design thinking laser.
This is amazing. So and you just are drawn to do this. Like, you just want to write guides, you want to challenge yourself.
Well, once you go through a game, and I'm not going to say become an expert at it, but you kind of master the game itself, you get all the nitty-gritty details, and you start looking into some guides that people have written, and you find that there are pieces left out, or you found a different strategy that works better against the boss, I'm inclined to share it with the community. And now I have this forum. Growing up, you would have to just write on a piece of paper and have your own little briefcase of maps and all that. I mean, it sounds a little obsessive, but we did not have all this knowledge at our hands whenever I started this way back in the 90s.
Yeah, so I would say, you have a lot of videos, thousands of subscribers, and then you have tons of views. I would say, what is like the most, what would you say of any of the videos on your YouTube is the most accomplished, or that you're most proud of?
I kind of like my no-death long plays. I'm particularly happy with the Final Fantasy solo character quest that I've completed. In particular, the White Mage, which you're really relying on the luck of the game to make happen. Now,
this is like, for people who, most people probably know what Final Fantasy is, but what is what is this no death run you're talking about?
Well, it's just a solo character run, to where usually you're able to pick a party of 4 characters to walk through the game. Mm-hmm. And here I had chose to just pick one single character, no supporting party members, and take him throughout the entire game. and through the ending without upgrading his class. There's an option where you can upgrade the class to turn your fighter into a warrior. I chose to forego that just to make it as difficult as possible.
And this is a non-stop playthrough.
I just record the ending because if I did the whole entire thing, people would be probably bored with the grinding. And in some cases, like the thief, you had to kind of really farm the stats from the level up. If you didn't get that particular random level on those harder characters to level up, then you would have to reset the console and try again.
So how many game guides or facts or wikis or walkthroughs have you made, and how many challenges do you think you've done? And do you know?
As far as guides, I've drawn a bunch of maps for Breath of Fire 4. That was the best because you're talking about a game that has a 3-point perspective and a rotating camera. So there's no way to really screen grab it unless you want to keep the camera situated, but with the angles, I found it was easier just to hand draw these.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, I have, I think, 20 or so game maps up there.
Oh, wow.
Mainly for The Last Ninja and Breath of Fire 4. And I have a couple of side quest guides for Breath of Fire 4 and Simon's Quest. That was actually the first one I made.
Was it? Simon's Quest?
Yep.
When did you make it?
When did I make it? Or?
Yeah.
Oh, shoot. I would say maybe a good 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, I love Simon's Quest. I always remember as being like, I'd be in middle school or high school at a friend's house in the weekend, and we'd be up like late, like 2 a.m, trying to figure out like, what do we do? How do we fulfill this riddle? And like, what's in this mansion? And like, and it was always just like, it was like one of the ones to where you needed to have some type of guide or something that says, no, you need this object, and then you hold that object over at this place, or then you have to go here. And yeah, it's kind of hard to, I guess ever since there's been games, there's been game guides, right?
Oh, yes. And what drew me to that one was the fact that, if you remember right, there was a weird leveling up mechanic to where after a certain level, only certain enemies would give you experience to the next level. And trying to locate where those were. So I painstakingly went through to find out what enemies level up.
Oh, wow.
And I even took it to the extreme of saying, okay, you could hit an enemy this many times with the leather whip, this many times with the chain whip, in order to figure out, how many, pseudo hit point value that they had.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
The weird thing, most people assume it ramped up in binary, but I was able to find out through proof that some of the bosses do not have the amount of hits. I think it was 256 they were saying that they had, and in reality I think it truncated at 255. I would have to look to get the exact number, but it was something that all the guides seem to have gotten wrong, and I was just amazed to learn, wow, if you go through this insanity, you can actually get to the bottom of it.
This is cool. And so the best way if people want to get in contact with you, is that through your website or through the YouTube? Or?
Probably through the YouTube's a little bit better. I used to have a forum through the website, but that was before I knew how to really protect myself against spam, and I just kind of put out the email in plain text, and obviously that didn't go well. For anyone that enjoys any type of video game challenges, long plays, I do not put my own narration on it. That's gotten me, I guess, into trouble with some copyright from time to time, but what are you going to do? But I would encourage them to go ahead and check out my YouTube channel. That's MEV, V as in Victor, 1978. You'll find me on there.
All right. Thanks for being on the show.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
The Thief is a Dungeons & Dragons actual play with just one player, CC Way.
Getting more information, I think, is pretty safe, and I can't let Osmond rot.
And a full cast of NPCs, supported with soundscapes.
This isn't some pickpocket or killer or slumlord. These are important people. These are the kinds of people who, if they get your name, you cannot evade.
The original world is grim, and it is unlikely the thief will survive. Created by Michael Schofield.
Listen for The Thief, an audio drama, anywhere you find podcasts and on the web at thiefpodcast.com.
What are your thoughts about the season? Like what we did and accomplished for season 3?
Man, so this season is we've talked a lot about this kind of like offline, but this is hands down our most professional season yet. It's my favorite season to work on. It's funny because I think it demonstrates, and this is a UX principle, but it just demonstrates that it doesn't really matter how long your product has been around, it evolves and takes shape. And I kind of feel like it's taken us 3 seasons to figure out what design thinking games feels like in seasons 4, 5, and 6. And so to that end, we began, and we've joked about this, like how we were going to be not an interview podcast. And then we just did an entire season of interview podcasts. But those interview podcasts, those interviews that we ran were like super fascinating. Good. They were super good, man. And the collective like umbrella feeling like I get from this. And we talked to different people at all different stages. I've been watching, you and I have been watching Dice Invasion with like as fans, but also in awe of her marketing and her design. And then you have folks like Connor Wake or Dan Scalise who have produced and published. You have folks just kind of like across the gamut. And kind of a fun story is going to be on like shelves, and that's also fascinating to watch. But my big lesson is that, hey, we could make a game. You could make a game. It's not that
you can make a podcast. You can make a game. You could run a conference. We know people
who feels empowering.
Yeah.
It feels fucking empowering. Yeah. And it was really cool to see like, hey, I do all this. And I just Forrest Gumped my way into it. And I Forrest Gumped my way into adulthood, and it's just one of those things that you look at people who have produced something that's like really high fidelity, whether it's a video game or like a really dope, like the assets of like a really dope board game, something like Gloomhaven that's just kind of like bananas to just like hold and and that all starts with just like a handful of people, sometimes just one person, like saying I'm gonna make this thing.
I agree. My lesson this season is like year 1 was very much about process and working with each other and trying a lot of different things. And 2 was even more trying and different stuff, and then realizing, hey, we don't have to stick to this long podcast format or schedule. We can do short, we can do long, whatever. And then in 3, I agree. Like, I feel like we've just like, let's have fun with it. Let's do a chat drama. Let's do some interviews, but then like, let's also focus. Like, I love the ad swapping, like some of the cool stuff from like Ghost Wax, and then
Critically Stupid. There's this hilarious, Stupid, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's some really good like cross ads. So I think I'm very happy with how this season turned out, and I think going forward it may be even smaller, but more of a punch. And I think that's this season. We went smaller, but had more fidelity, more entertainment, more cool stuff, and just put together in a cool way, you know?
Well, we went smaller, but I think we actually produced more content than ever in terms of like length, variety of content, production of content.
Because we went modular. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think the other big takeaway is like design thinking games is an act of networking, right? I feel closer and more a part of, even if I could, like, I even like updated my Blue Sky profile to say armchair game designer, you know? Remember how design thinking games started, and I hope this stays in for our listeners. We were like, hey, we don't have like we don't have like the credibility of like an IGN behind us or whatever to say like, oh, we are awesome game reviewers, but what we do have is the credibility of being UX. And so we're like, you know who plays games? UXers. Well, now that like design thinking daddies are a thing, like I think you know who loves game design? Bears.
Is design thinking daddies a thing? Is that a thing? No, like a real thing?
We no, it's us. We're the design thinking daddies.
I got you. Yeah,
this is like, it's not really I just kind of like
season 2. We'll have an actual play podcast, White Wolf, World of Darkness, called Design Thinking Daddies. I'm just throwing it out. This is our ChatGPT for next year. Michael, the actual design thinking DILF, and me, the gay daddy bear or muscle daddy bear or whatever you want to call it.
I love it. Yeah. And together we make design thinking daddies. Look, you know, when you and I were like at like PAX Unplugged, this is now like, hey, I hope you enjoyed our like 8 or 9 episodes of interviews and an audio drama, but this is back to basics here. So when we were in Philadelphia, we basically realized that Tim is like literally like 2 feet taller than me, but we're basically the same person. If you ever saw like twins with Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito or whatever, this is basically us. And like, you know, my wife calls me Little Bear for a reason, you know? So like I've got it. I've got the broad shoulders. So the design thinking daddies, I think, is our next marketing ploy.
Yeah, either a ChatGPT drama, another spin-off podcast, or actual play podcast, which I've been actually increasingly since Dungeons and Drag Queens and Real Housewives of Dungeons and Dragons and Dungeons and Daddies. Design thinking daddies being, or even a game studio, design thinking daddies games or something. Whatever, man.
We know Nick Fink plays plays Dungeons and Dragons. Look, man, I mean, like, I think the criteria is clear, right? It's like,
what are we comfortable sharing about games? I feel like we learned from our guests in the past that you kind of want to have, especially Connor and Breeze and some other guests, is like you need to kind of have a couple games that you're developing, like a library that you're kind of working on, like products. So think of them as like small products. I would say that comfortably we have 3 or 4 games between the two of us, some combined, some individual.
I'm actually pretty happy, pretty comfortable to start sharing, you know, like unless I think we have the benefit of being in like whatever the bubble is of not being popular enough that no one's going to really come in and like steal our potatoes.
True that.
Exactly. You know, we are a fan of horror, and you know what? Like, to me, this feels like the kind of game like that the Boulet brothers and Dragula would like get behind. You know, so we're making a vampire game and kind of like an eldritch librarian game that both have very different play styles, and one we've play tested a few times at a conference, and we have a virtual tabletop version of it that we're going to go back into play testing. We've actually iterated on that one the most, and the other, but this is the kind of thing.
A lot of them have been play tested. Like 2 of them have been play tested a decent amount. So
now, what I really love about what Connor said is like, hey, you will get to this point with a game and you just put it in the bucket, and at some point you'll come back to it, or whatever. But again, these are games that we're dovetailing deeply into kind of like our horror fandom.
I think I would support what you say to where these four, even if they're playtested a lot, playtested a decent amount, been playtested with game developers. And then the individual games that we think maybe have some feels that it still plugs into this, maybe just dark horror gothic punk. But
That's kind of what it is, yeah.
Feel of I'm sorry, I now cannot get it out of my brain. Design thinking daddy's games. It's like stuck in my brain.
It's kind of perfect.
Even though those are in a prototyping stage, I feel like dude, there's some stuff here. I'm very positive about it, and I think what we could speak to is the plan is to, kind of play test some of these at some cons and get them, maybe do remote play testing, refine them first, do some digital play testing or doing local with your friends and family, because it sometimes means easier to invite friends over and just do it that way as opposed to recruiting people online to do digital play tests. But I think we're actually just going to do it all. It's going to be a matter of necessity, and then try to get stuff at cons soon. And the goal being to just get to that first published game, because I feel like once you do it, it's possible, and already we're improving our processes. So
well, and one thing I might just address is what does this have to do with design thinking games, like the podcast and all that? It's I think what we have emerged from is the podcast is providing just basically a season of research that we are sharing with all of you. We learned, I think, a ton. I mean, even before we had him on the podcast, we've learned a ton from Dan Scalise and Connor Wake, a ton from Dice Invasion, just watching her process. The kind of a fun story team are fascinating to watch. Yeah. All of these folks have, not in the spirit of us having actually consulted with them or not, but have by talking to them have inspired changes to our process, given us hope where we've needed hope, and gave us some ideas that now what we're going to do is basically a season of the show, and then we're going to do a season of game design, and whether or not a game emerges in whole from that season, I don't think
our library will have advanced.
Exactly. We're dedicating the time, and then we'll return to a season to kind of we're going to consume, and then we're going to produce, consume, create, and this is kind of the cycle of what we're doing here. I think
this is the way.
This is the way.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Alex.
And my name is Diana.
And we are 2/5 of Critically Stupid, a comedy Dungeons & Dragons podcast with new episodes every Friday on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. If I had to pick, I'd probably say my favorite NPC in the show is Sean the gorilla, who I decided in the moment wears pants, a waistcoat, and spectacles. Diana, who's your favorite NPC in the show?
My favorite character is Captain Davil Starsong, because in my head, y'all, he's fine AF and makes me feel a certain way.
If you'd like to experience Diana red-faced and sweaty in real time, catch us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you enjoy that sweet, sweet content. You can catch updates on our Twitter @CritStupid.
Come watch me glisten.
I love that this is going to be audio only. So listener, you're going to have to take my word on it. She's real good looking.
We had a season challenge for Outlast Trials. We both got it. It's an online version of Outlast. It's kind of the fourth game in the series. I logged over 20 some hours into it and got to the point to where it's I think I'm good with this game. I've played it enough to where, but it's also not in full release, my understanding. It's a test or beta or something, because at a certain point, the 4 or 5 there's like 3 levels, 4 or 5 for each level, but then at some point it just loops and repeats, and you're just doing the same things with added difficulty. And then they get in the Omega Trials or the X Trials, it's the same quests again with even more difficulty.
That's right. Yeah, it's technically in like early access when you look at Steam at the moment. We're recording this mid-July.
Yeah, so I will say enough to where I'm keeping my eye on it. I love the game, solo or with other players. I'm waiting, probably like most people, to be like, good, great, love to play it. Waiting for more levels to drop, more story to drop.
Yeah, like so let's talk about our experience. So the TLDR of Outlast Trials and we did this in episode 1 of the season, but the TLDR is that it is a prequel to the Outlast games, which were kind of phenomenal because their gameplay was basically that you as an investigator could not fight back. You snuck around, you had a little video camcorder with limited batteries, and you were in an asylum or things like this, and you had to hide, and the hiding in the dark was intense,
especially when you run out of batteries.
Yeah, well, and Outlast Trials is in the same vein where you and now up to 3 others. I think it's like a four party cap.
Player, yeah. And I never had a problem finding a game. I always went on a search for a party, and I always got into a group. So which tells me that's a decent player base.
I think it's a great player base. The Reddit is actually pretty alive, which is pretty cool. And the whole idea is you as a team have to complete these level challenges that are set in the Outlast world. You don't want to get caught by the bad guys who are kind of lurking around being crazy. You sneak, you hide, and then you have some class-based powers that are limited use that lets you escape and do other stuff.
I don't know which one you went for, but I went health and maxed out health.
Yeah, so you got way further than I did. So with that being the TLDR, your review is pretty positive. This is up your alley, right? Because you play a lot of Dead by Daylight. Yeah,
the stickler stuff is what I mentioned, which is basically with it being an early access, which is really only 2-3 killers. Crazy character. I love the ones they have. Mother Gooseberry with the puppet. That's a doctor. It has a drill in it, and then the crazy electro cop and who shocks himself and the groin and crazy, and the kids and all this. I love it.
Yeah.
I just want more. And that's just really loved early access. Maxed out my health to where I could heal myself. It recharges quickly. I heal my whole party, and it creates a stun field. So if I'm ever a boss is on me or about to get me, not a boss, but one of the killers, I can hit it, and it heals me as well as stuns them and lets me get away. So very positive reaction to it. What about you?
Yeah, I enjoyed my experiences with you and the couple of strangers. So here are my positive things. The gameplay is a lot of fun. The levels and the world, let's call it world design or whatever, is just it's so good. It's so batshit and disturbing. My favorite is the one where the I don't know, you have to save the kids, save the kids in the orphanage or whatever. And I love that because specifically there's a scene where they're jukebox dancing around some dude who's crucified that you have to saw in half, and it's just so.
Oh my god, dude! It is Outlast bananas. Yeah,
it's the story is good. I think the classes are kind of fun. The one I chose was I wanted to be a sneaker and a rogue, so I have the one that lets me kind of see through walls, right, a little bit. But I found that
that's a thing.
Yeah, well, from what I understand from Reddit is that's the lamest class. My big thing is that
what was your negatives?
My chief negative is that I don't love playing with strangers. So I actually thought the lobby was really quite good. It just throws you in there. You could decorate your room. You could and you could do that. But I had some sort of thing, and I don't know how you design for it. And maybe you do. Where unless I was in a party with folks, I wouldn't do it. And so I played a lot on my own, and playing solo is too long of a time commitment for me for the kind of player time that I have, because those levels are super long.
I played a bunch of solo. It's usually 45 minutes to 50 minutes to get through each level, I think. Once I learned how to play, like when I was learning, I died all the time. But once I'm like, okay, this is the thing, I follow the chords, I know what I do, I need to keep hitting this button so I can see the active quest. Could do each level with solo within 40, 50 minutes. Before that, though, you're talking like, oh shit, it took me 2 hours to get through this thing. So, but I didn't know what I was doing,
And that's where I think I am. I don't think I'm like super good. The other thing is like I play the game like my favorite like first person sneakers, like the original Thief and its remake and Dishonored and stuff, where I'm trying to ghost it, right? And like and so I sneak from shadow to shadow. And so with my particular like gameplay, and I guess like my aversion to like my kind of like stranger danger, like I like for me, it was never. I always had more anxiety like playing the game than not, and not from the game itself. It's from like the act of like, oh, like I want to party, but like I don't really know anyone who's playing, and so that was my big, which I found was an interesting like social commentary on me. But you logged some 20 hours. I think I logged about like 10 hours like playing, 10 to 15 hours. And it's totally awesome, and it's definitely somebody's cup of tea, but it's not mine. It's not like it's funny. I love playing with strangers and like shooters, like Hell Let Loose or whatever. But like, there's something about like this particular game that I don't know.
It's interesting because I've played, as you know, I played DBD, as I play Alien Fireteam Elites, I played Predator Hunting Grounds, I've played this, I played Friday the 13th. So I play a lot of online MOBAs, games that are like this, that are horror themed, right? Or even asynchronous horror. So I just think I get we're in software. I guess it's kind of hard to think about like, why don't you more feature releases? Where's the content? Like, come on. And you're like, bitch, we just got it out the door. You got to give us a second. There's only 10 devs on our team or something. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that was mine. Loved everything else about it though. As the listeners may know, last year, we were doing a Patreon, and if you supported us on Patreon, you got the episodes ad-free and early, which was cool.
Anyone who's been like listening with us from season 1 and who will enjoy season 3 know that we are iterating a lot. And one of the big things we're iterating on is like what we're spending time on. There's probably like a whole interesting episode or like side thing about like why we chose to back off Patreon, but we backed off Patreon. We would love it if people would donate to us.
Please head over there and support us if you like. We're going to put some content and stuff there, but it's not going to be exclusive. One of the things we always talk about is Game of the Year. We have kind of a low, which makes me wonder, total tangent, there has to be a board game of the year, right? Because I know that there's a TTRPG of the year because Starfinder won it its first year it came out. So we should probably expand this going forward to where it's like not just best video game of the year, but then also board game and TTRPG. But speaking to video games, the big ones that I'm aware of, Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, Final Fantasy XVI, Resident Evil 4 Remake, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Hogwarts Legacy. Those are the ones that Diablo 4. Those are the ones that are the big ones that I see. Do you have any thoughts? And stuff there still could be stuff that comes out.
Yeah, I find that it's funny. Like I was looking at this list, so I've actually played. Here's what I've played. That's actually on these lists that I'm kind of like surprised of. So I haven't played any of the ones that like the world has been playing. I've been playing. I've been kind of going back into my library, but that's not totally true. So So of the ones that I'm seeing, I'm just right now I'm looking at IGN's best reviewed games of 2023 as like kind of like a list, and I've played a lot of these. Just I've never heard of any of them in contention for Game of the Year lists.
It is very much a year of sequels and remakes. Sequels: Street Fighter 6, Legend of Zelda, Resident Evil 4. I've heard nothing but good stuff. Everyone's like, if you don't play any Resident Evil remake, play Resident Evil 4.
I want to play 4. Yeah, so I was just confirming that System Shock was originally made. Now this is back in like the late 90s, I think, by Looking Glass Studios, and Looking Glass Studios is my favorite game developer of all time because they made Thief, Thief the Dark Project, Thief Metal Age, Thief 3, and things like that before they were able to dissolve. So I played System Shock, and it's truly like it's not a remaster, it is a remake, like all new graphics, like they fixed a lot of the voice acting, and it was like phenomenal.
Yeah, there's so many good sequels coming out, like Diablo 4,
Well, Diablo 4, like, yeah.
Resident Evil 4 remake, Street Fighter 6 sequel, Jedi Survivor. I don't know much if I've played any original games, and the only original game that I'm aware of is Hogwarts Legacy, which everyone lost their shit about. Like Elden Ring's level lost their shit about, because I remember it came out, there were hacks, and people were like, I got the killing curse, and this is how you do this is how you can transform into an animal, and all this stuff. And people and I get the IP and the fandom, right?
And Hogwarts Legacy is going to make game news of the year, right? Because there was this whole boycott, and then it just kind of showed, like, the success of the game just sort of demonstrated the utility of that boycott.
Can you separate the artist from the person? I mean, that whole conversation.
The perennial or existential question. I played Hogwarts Legacy because I'm a fan of the IP, and I played it on the quiet. I didn't support or review it.
What did you think of that? Game of the Year nominee?
Hell no. I mean, like, Hogwarts Legacy is not a great game, and anyone who says otherwise is like batshit crazy, and they haven't played enough. Hogwarts Legacy is fine. The story is fine. The customizability of like this large open world is fine. The openness of the world is fine. What it is a lot of the Wizarding World IP, and you can cast spells, and it's fun.
I wonder that about Star Wars, Jedi Survivor. It is the Star Wars fandom, but it's also a new story that takes place kind of after 6, but before, after 3, but before 4 now, right? My criteria is kind of this. I only have 2 criteria, and this is, I guess, the last thing I want to say about it is, if I keep playing the game, meaning I don't actually put it down, that it's enjoyable, and I play it, and I want to play it, that's the best criteria for me. The second one is, did I cry? Those are my 2 video game criteria. I cried.
Like, is it narratively powerful?
Yeah, I cried during Stray when that poor cat at the end. It's just really, it's good. And then I cried at Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. It is a beautiful game. But I also cried at Star Wars Jedi Survivor and Final Fantasy XVI. Amazing stories, like really good. Final Fantasy XVI is so guttural and raw and blunt. It reminds me more like of Walking Dead than it does of the Final Fantasy genre, because how they're punching and the tragedy, and then that's, you keep going, and that kind of feel.
Awesome.
So I don't know, but I would say of everything I've played so far, to me, it's going to come down between Star Wars Jedi Survivor and Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. And if I had to vote now, I would say Tears of the Kingdom. Not because of the hype, but because it's good. It's really good.
So the game that came out this year, I guess, other than Outlast Trials, that like I played a lot. I played a ton of like Sons of the Forest, but that was so buggy. I can't recommend that. Like I played.
That's a pretty popular game that came out. I know some people who play it. I see a bunch on Twitch.
I enjoyed building a fortress, and then I got tired of it after about like 15 hours, 20 hours. And then I know they have a ton of updates, and I'm kind of done. So this is sort of, for me, it's the bane of early access. Like, I played it too early. I got my fill. I'm done. Maybe it's a whole lot better, but until then, like, did I care about the story? No. Like, did the bugs irritate me? Yeah.
The last grenade I'm going to roll in under the door right before it closes, like right in the crack. And I hope it does, because I played the first one and it is amazing. What comes out in October is Spider-Man 2. And Spider-Man 1 game of the year. The Miles Morales, it's amazing. It's super hot right now. And I did see, like, at Comic-Con, they just did another trailer drop. I don't know if you played Spider-Man, the one that came.
Spider-Man, yeah.
It was
just recently. Yeah.
And so Spider-Man 2 drops in October, and part of me secretly hopes that it kicks everyone's ass,
Well, that's what happened with I don't know, like with the movie that came out. I want more Spider-Man. I want more Spider-Verse maybe than I want like Spider-Man or whatever, but like the IP is refreshed for me because of the movie.
Thank you for listening and connecting with Design Thinking Games on TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter. You can also check out designthinkinggames.com to request topics, ask questions, or see what else is going on. Until next time, game on. Any final thoughts for our listeners, Rapid Protobot?
Destroy.